Mount Everest is being transmitted out into space and back here to North America. Mount Everest is our focus tonight. Even as you look at it, the mountain is under assault by a team of Canadian and Sherpa climbers who are doing something that has never been done before. They are televising their own climb.
This is ABC News Nightline. Reporting from Washington, Ted Koppel.
Good evening. This is one of those times on this program when we stretch television technology to its outer limits. Stretch it to such an extent, in fact, that it may fail. We are looking together at a picture that is coming to us live from one of the remotest and least accessible locations in the world. That is Mount Everest in Nepal. It is already Saturday morning there, and the picture you're looking at is being shot right now, is being transmitted along a series of 5 microwave links located on mountain peaks between Everest and the capital of Nepal, Kathmandu. From there to a satellite, and from the satellite back here to the United States. To climb Mount Everest is similar to planning a military campaign. The logistics are staggering, the demands, the costs enormous, and the dangers awesome. ABC's Jack Smith is himself a mountain climber and has been covering the Canadian climbing team.
To the mountain people of the Himalayas, she is Chongolungma, the goddess mother of the land. Everest, 29,028 feet above sea level. Her massive buttresses and walls are nearly 2 miles high, twice the size of any mountain in the Rockies. 122 people have reached her summit. 54 have died trying. The expedition has been meticulously planned. Permission for the climb had to be secured from the Nepalese back in 1978. It then took 4 years to find the sponsors, the gear, and the climbers. Men like expedition leader Bill March, a 40-year-old mountaineering instructor from Calgary, Canada. Al Burgess, one of the strongest climbers on the team. At 33, he has made many of the most difficult ascents in the Alps in Canada. Blair Griffiths, cameraman. Most of the videotape used in this report is his. He died 4 weeks after these pictures were taken in an accident on the mountain. 3 Sherpas also died. But the climbers are unaware that tragedy lies ahead, and so they clown for the camera. Unlike past expeditions to Everest, this one is committed to recording every step of the ascent as it happens. The climbers even interview each other.
How do you feel about things at the moment?
Well, at the moment, I'm feeling very optimistic.
It is the first climb in history on Everest to be seen as it's unfolding.
Hey, look at this! Isn't that nice? Mountains.
The climbers get their first glimpse of the high peaks. Mount Numbur, 22,000 feet high, higher even than Mount McKinley. But here in the Himalayas, the scale is so vast, Numbur is just a small and insignificant outlying peak. The climbers all carry umbrellas with them, for it rains incessantly. The summer monsoon is not yet over. After 13 days, the summit of Everest finally comes into view, rising behind the ice ridge of its sister peak, Nuptse. By tradition, the Tangboche Monastery nearby is one of the last stops before base camp. The Buddhist monks and novices here believe that Everest is the home of the gods. Expedition leader Bill March assures the head monk his climbers will respect the mountain. In return, the monk blesses the climbers and wishes them a safe ascent and Godspeed. 3 weeks to the day after leaving Kathmandu, the climbers reach the Khumbu Glacier with the lower slopes of Everest in the distance. In the boulder field at the head of the glacier is base camp, which has already been set up by an advanced party.
The altitude here at base camp is 17,700 feet, and breathing can be difficult. For the air here contains 50% less oxygen than at sea level. So climbers always spend several days here to let their bodies adjust to the altitude before going on up the mountain.
Can I have some soup, please?
The Canadians try to eat as much as possible, for above base camp, the air is so thin they will inevitably lose strength on the climb. In spite of the difficulties ahead, though, their spirits are high. From base camp, the climbers will use the standard approach to the mountain. Their route will go up through the treacherous Khumbu Icefall, a great cascade of broken ice cliffs that rises 2,000 feet above base camp to the western Khum or valley. From there, the route is to go through a series of support camps up the south pillar of Everest to the summit. The Canadians can only see part of the route from base camp, but the South Pillar is a mile high and will be one of the hardest climbs ever attempted on Everest. The climbers have brought a tape deck with them, and for 5 lazy days as they adjust to the altitude, they and the Sherpas stay at base camp and check out the gear they will need on the climb. Oxygen will be used for the final 3,000 feet.
And 4 liters a minute to go to the summit.
The scenery roundabout is breathtaking, the throne room of the mountain gods. On the 20th of August, the expedition begins to move up the Khumbu Icefall to establish Camp 1. The climbing is exhausting. The icefall is half a mile wide, 2 miles long, and appallingly dangerous.
The big ice towers that we have to pass underneath can be anywhere from 10 feet high to 50 feet or 60 feet high. Absolute chaos is what it is. I think it's the only way I can describe it. If you could imagine an earthquake that's taken the earth that you're standing on and the ground that you're standing on and has just broken it up, taken a concrete road and has shattered it into thousands of pieces and piled it all up one on top of the other. That's what an icefall is like.
Ice climbing is not easy. Expedition leader Bill March gives a demonstration for the camera and quickly finds himself in difficulty.
That's as hard as bloody bridges I've done, you know.
Looks it.
Okay, Dave.
Yeah.
What's your hope now?
The climbers sometimes have to use ladders to bridge the huge cracks in the ice fall. Many of these crevasses, as they're called, are impossible to get across any other way. The Sherpas pray out loud. The Canadians suppress their fear.
To an extent, you're walking through a minefield, conscious of that. And how do people deal with that? The only way I could deal with it was to put it in the closet and say it's not going to happen.
But on the 31st of August, it does. As the team is carrying loads up the icefall, fresh snow on the rim of Everest breaks away, and an avalanche sweeps the face into the icefall, killing 3 Sherpas and burying some of the climbers.
First of all, I was knocked by the air blast about 30, 40 meters, and just kind of tossed end over end. And then I landed in the snow, and then the snow came down. And there was 3 waves of snow, and each one was bigger. And the first 2 I managed to keep an air space around my head and chest, and the 3rd one buried me. But
just 2 days later, Rusty Bailey again escapes death. Against all odds, another accident occurs as a section of the icefall itself collapses, trapping some of the climbers. Blair Griffiths, the expedition cameraman, becomes the 4th victim of the mountain.
He was trapped in between 2 big blocks, and it looked like he'd been killed instantly. I had a lot of trouble just asking myself how important it was for us to stand on top of the mountain. Was it worth killing more people to get up there?
Rusty Bailey quits the expedition. 5 other climbers join him and leave as well.
I'm not a superstitious person, but I just think there's something a little wrong with Everest right now.
Up on Everest, the remaining climbers retreat to base camp. March refuses to be bitter, but on the radio, as he talks to the support team back in Kathmandu, he cannot disguise his anguish.
I have given serious consideration to cancelling expedition to save further loss of life.
March is finally persuaded to continue. But with fewer climbers, the difficult South Pillar route is no longer feasible.
Permission has been granted for the South Col. I repeat verbally, permission has been granted for the South Col route.
The South Col, the traditional route on Everest, up the snowfields to the right of the pillar. It's a route the Canadians who stay are determined to make. 2 weeks ago, 8 climbers and 16 Sherpas, less than half the original number, went back up the icefall. Camp 1 is well established on the upper rim. The tents can be seen as the tiny dots in the center of the screen. The gear already piled up there is thought quite adequate for the scaled-down attempt on the summit. The expedition has moved up into the western Coombe, or valley, the great ice bowl which is the source of the Khumbu Glacier. The summit of Everest, vastly foreshortened in this shot, is actually 8,000 feet above. Camp 2 has now been set up as a forward supply base, and the climbers are nearing the South Col, or saddle. With good weather, they hope to ascend the final 3,000 feet and reach the summit within 2 weeks.
A famous mountaineer once said that climbing was the conquest of the useless. And indeed, in today's busy world, it must seem like an anachronism, for all it has to offer is adventure. But that is precisely its allure, for nothing is so intoxicating as adventure. That's why many of the Canadians chose to stay on, and why even those who left may someday forgive this mountain and come back. This is Jack Smith for Nightline at the Everest Expedition Base Camp.
What you have just seen, of course, was on videotape. What you are seeing behind me there is live. And since it is a spectacularly beautiful Saturday morning in Nepal, let's take advantage of that live picture and have our cameraman just pan across Mount Everest. When we come back, we'll talk with two members of the expedition who are no longer on the mountain.
In any business, the name of the game is productivity.
This is John Emet, a team member who was ordered down from the mountain after 4 other men died to act as spokesman for the expedition. And joining us from Calgary in Alberta, Canada, is Rusty Bailey, one of 6 climbers who dropped out of the mission. John, let me come to you first. Why was it felt necessary to have... John, can I see the picture in Nepal? Yes. There we go. Why was it felt necessary to have anyone come back to act as spokesman?
Well, we were having really difficult communication problems because the radio was not working from base camp to Kathmandu, and we just wanted to make sure that the facts that were going back to Canada were the true facts. And I was asked by Bill March, the leader, to come down and explain what is happening on Everest at the present time to Canadians and to other people such as the Americans who are interested.
All right, do it, would you please? Tell us.
Do you want me to explain what's happening on Everest now?
I would like that very much.
Okay, well, the guys are up there. They're right now at 21,300 feet at Camp 2. The winds are very strong today. It's amazing to look at these live photographs of Everest and realize that there's winds blowing up there which are so strong that a man cannot climb. They've had to retreat down to Camp 2 in the western Coombe where it's more sheltered, and they've been doing this for the past 2 days, taking their time, resting, and preparing for the next push up towards the summit.
All right, John, even as we are hearing you, we are looking at a live picture of Mount Everest. I've got to ask you this one question, and then we'll get back to the mission itself. Try to stay away for a moment from the old Sir Edmund Hillary chestnut because it's there. Why do men subject themselves to this kind of thing? Why climb it?
Well, Everest is the highest mountain in the world, obviously. It's the ultimate challenge for mountaineers. It's the World Series of Mountaineering, or the Olympic Games, I think. It's the only way to describe it. And no matter how many times it's been climbed, it'll always be that ultimate goal for anybody who's ever aspired to be a mountaineer in anywhere, any country.
All right, Rusty Bailey in Calgary, you have got in front of you a mock-up of Mount Everest, and I wonder if we could take advantage of your skill and your background and that mock-up for you to give us a rough idea of where the climbers are right now and what still lies ahead of them.
Well, Ted, they're recuperating here in Camp 2, weathering these high winds. They've already established Camp 3 up here, and the next thing they have to do is fix their final camp up on the South Col here.
Why is it necessary to fix all these camps?
Well, the final ridge climb to the summit of Everest is right there at the limits of what they can do, and it's very important that they have a secure camp to go back down to after they've got to the summit.
Let me just jump off again for a moment and ask you why it was that you left. I mean, once you have invested as much of yourself as all of you have in making that climb, it must have been an enormously difficult decision to come back down the mountain.
Right, it was very difficult, Ted, and I guess that I had just found that for me, I could no longer consider it a justifiable risk. And what it was becoming for me was a sort of a Russian roulette, and I just was not personally prepared to accept those kind of risks.
All right, John Amat, back out there in Kathmandu, give us a sense then of what still lies ahead of them. What is it that they are trying to accomplish in how many, first of all, how many feet left to be scaled?
Well, they're now at 21,300. They have 8,000 feet of climbing from where they are now. It'll take them, in my opinion, at least a week to get in a position where they can go for the summit. But it's very difficult for us to predict that from here because we don't know the problems they're facing on the mountain. They will be doing a lot of discussion, planning logistically how many oxygen cylinders to carry up, how much food to carry up, how much oxygen. And this is what they're using these rest days for. I'm sure they're talking and talking and talking and trying to work out exactly what is the best way to go about this climb.
And as far as the televising of this is concerned, tell us what the goal is.
Well, the goal is to try and get a radio camera to the summit of Everest so that we can send a live interview from the summit of Mount Everest back to North America. And that'll be the first time it's ever been achieved. We're also hoping we can have a live aerial shot of men standing on the summit. This is something else that's never been achieved. So there are many communication firsts that we're dealing with here.
Who all has financed this? It must have been an enormously expensive project.
Well, our major sponsor in the project is Air Canada, which is the Canadian national airline. But we also have support from several organizations. Teleglobe Canada has put in the satellite link for us. This is a Canadian Crown corporation that deals with international satellite technology. Hitachi has provided us with a lot of the television equipment to make this happen. And there have been many, many other sponsors who have provided equipment and money for the venture. If we had to pay for everything that we're using on Mount Everest, we'd have been paying close to $1 million in cash. But of course, a lot of it was donated. Our total cash expenditure is more like $300,000.
All right, John and Rusty, in the couple of minutes we've got left, I'd like to bring in one more guest. Dr. Peter Hackett climbed Mount Everest as part of the first medical team to study the effects of the ascent on the human heart and lungs. And part of the year, he operates a clinic on the mountain, a clinic which treats people with mountain-related sicknesses. He joins us now from KIMO, our affiliate in Anchorage, Alaska. Dr. Hackett, since you're the only one we have handy who has been on the mountain, and you've done it alone, which I understand is puts you in a very elite company indeed, tell us what those last few feet are like. Why is it so difficult? Why is that the most difficult part, or is it?
It's not really the most difficult part on the mountain, or necessarily the most dangerous, but it is the trickiest, because so much depends on the weather, the conditions, and just plain good luck. It's a very steep section from the South Col up to the summit, falling apart away on both sides, and if you slip, that's your last slip.
And why is it so unusual for a man to go up alone, as you did?
Well, it's very unusual because under those kind of conditions, if anything at all went wrong, even if you sprained an ankle, you probably would not be able to get down, and a rescue would be impossible, so therefore you would perish.
During these last few seconds that we have right now, I hope we can just bring that picture of Mount Everest, the live picture that we have up again. And Dr. Hackett, if you would tell us then, what is the expectation of this team in terms of how many people will be climbing up that last part?
I don't know exactly what their plan is. It depends all on their logistics, but it's a success if only one gets to the top. It's a bonus for everyone over the one person that gets to the top. I imagine they'll try to send at least 2 to 4.
Just give us a few seconds. When you stand there alone, what feeling?
A tremendous feeling of awe and respect for this mountain, not that it's just been conquered, but that, in my case, I was just lucky enough to stand on for a moment.
Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. In a moment, Carl Bernstein will have a report from Israel, the first of a series of Mideast update reports for Nightline.